today. Coach Chris Johnston, long time QB coach guru, runs a Complete QB and training. I've known him for 20 years, and he was doing it for longer than that. But that's how long I've known him, and obviously Derek knows him as well through the coaching ranks. But Coach has been a fantastic coach, not just quarterbacks, but obviously as a coordinator as well over the years. He's been with Hudson Catholic, Xavier High School, Poly Prep, I think Monroe College. He's been office coordinator at some of those roles and really had a lot of success in those areas. But most of the people, at least in New Jersey, would know Coach very well for obviously running Complete QB training, which he's been doing for, as far as I know, at least in excess of 20 years. So, and has really become one of the quarterback gurus, in the tri-state area, and really does a fantastic job, and has built that business coaching QBs for a very long time, which is a tribute to him, because in this business of
doesn't happen often.
Yeah. I mean, there's two. You and Mehdi are probably the two guys that have been doing it up in North Jersey the longest, I would say. Maybe, and then obviously coupled with probably Tony Rassiopi down here where we are. Those are probably the three that have been doing it the longest. You might be sustain that.
You literally
might be doing it the longest, though, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you're honored by that or you're like, man, I was once young, but
I got the white and the beard, fellas.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. But yeah, you were, as far as I knew, you were, and I had done that stuff for a little bit, but I really dived heavily into the combine world. And I had obviously Chris at some of my very first events doing the QBs.
It's amazing.
Going back to the Dome in Lincoln Park, and
I remember.
Do you remember?
I think T-Neck.
That was the very first one, 2005. Yeah.
I was at the first one at T-Neck. I remember. Yeah, man.
Yep. That was so it's interesting, and a lot of those actually a lot of those coaches from those very first years end up becoming really a lot of them end up becoming trainers in that field, in the different fields. But
no doubt,
did a lot of great things. Some of them stay with us for a long time, but a lot of them really had some great success. It's interesting to look back now, and to see that. But it's because at the time when you're in these things, you're just hustling and trying to figure out the next thing. But yeah, so Chris, I would love for you, really to dive into your background, how you got into it, way back when, what made you get into it, and kind of the progression of everything you've done, because obviously I haven't seen you in quite a while. So I'd love to hear a lot more of the updates and all those kind of things.
Sure. First of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always fun to get on and talk about this type of stuff. It's just a blast, man. So thank you for that. So when I got into quarterback coaching, I was the beneficiary of a really talented, bright high school coach. I grew up in the Boston area. I was coached by a man named Gus Giardi. I was a very bad quarterback that he took the time with to coach, and he was fantastic. And I remember his attention to detail in an era where you had to get out the multiple colors of Sharpies on cards and all that. It was just a different era, man, where you really had to. I look at the technology tools we have now. If you talk to a young assistant, drawing play cards, I'm like, please don't complain ever about play cards, because play cards used to be really drawing play cards, man. And you made a stencil. Yes, you made a mistake 3/4 of the way in, back to the drawing board, man. You got to start over. So I kind of took what Coach had, and I was also really active as a kid coaching. I remember when I was in high school myself, football, baseball stuff, I would help out coaching younger kids. So it was always just something that I had a lot of fun with. Made my way down to New York, New Jersey area. I actually lived in Brooklyn for 25 years. So most of the time that I have coached, I was a resident in Brooklyn and spent a ton of time across the water in Jersey. Finally came over to Jersey. My wife won that battle 4 years ago. We made our move over here to New Jersey, but just started to get into So at the time, my oldest son, who is now 33, doing my quick math, he's 33. He played quarterback once upon a time. When he got older in college and stuff, he played safety, but he was a quarterback once upon a time. And it was really me trying to find a place that was a good space for quarterbacks to be taught and to develop. So that started like late 90s. I did my first camp at Canarsie High School in Brooklyn. Shout out to Mike Camerdice. He was the head coach at the time. Let me use his space, and it was great. And so from there, it just grew, and group and individual training grew from there. Now, the way that we did it back then was we had lots and lots of 2-day camps all around the country. We did them in Texas, Illinois, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, everywhere. We got as big as 21 camps in 2011, I believe it was. My wife and I essentially, along with my co-director, Ryan O'Flaherty from St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City. He's just a fantastic guy. He was my quarterback. That tells you how old I am. He was my quarterback in like 2004 in high school. So we ran them all, and that's burnout work. Just being brutally honest about it. It's burnout work, and
Coach Shu knows it, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, nobody knows it better than you guys. But so it's a for us, it became, as the marketplace also started to shift. It shifted 10 years or so ago. And then it shifted again post-COVID because what started to happen was college camps, those began to proliferate, and the one-day deal. So maybe the budget and the appetite for a strictly teaching and learning camp, it's just never been our thing. It's no knock on it at all, but exposure is not really our thing. Our thing has always been about technique and trying to help you be the best you can, try to like not mess up what you do well as a quarterback, but try to point out some things that you probably could do better. And there's definitely a place for the exposure piece, which is not what I really have an interest in doing all that much. So,
by the way, mirrored. I don't mean to interrupt. What the change that happened to you mirrored our change too.
Yeah,
it mirrored the same thing. So it was really I believe that it was a structural change in how like kids went to things because of the college kid. First, because of the satellites. The satellites was the first to change it.
Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, when Harbaugh showed up at PC, and I remember when, and I don't want you to forget where you are. So, but when Chris Partridge called me because I think Sabella had just taken over, but he was at Michigan now, and he said, "Come down there, and come down there and just see it," because you know everyone in the camps. He's like, "I want you to see where everything's going to go," and I'm like, and I came down there, watched it, and I was like, "Oh no." That's beginning. That was the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the college, obviously the 1 days and all that stuff, and then obviously COVID. You're right. Those two shifts. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So we, I think you just got to be agile and adjust to the marketplace. So from there it became, for the most part, I just found a shift in. There was still some folks that wanted to do like say a two-day camp, and everybody will tell you like, I love what you do, it's amazing. And you know how those type of things that you really love it in principle, and you really do want to participate in it and you want to do it, but life is so fast paced and you got so much going on that you might just not have 2 full days, 4 on-field sessions, 3 classroom sessions to really dig into that. It's just not necessarily for everybody. Even if they want to do it, it might not be for everybody. So we shifted. We started to go to 1-day events, and then really made a big push toward what we do a lot of now. Obviously, now coaching in college, I have to the trainings that I set up now typically are very, very narrow and very, very focused. Like I don't have necessarily as much availability to do it as much. Kind of selective about how much of a roster of training clients that we'll take on at any one time. But one of the things that the beauty of it, rather than fighting the way that the marketplace changes, kind of try to embrace it, and just see what could be different. So we started to do things like I would start to hear from college coaches and high school coaches in different locales that say, hey, this is a pretty common scenario. I got myself and 3 of my buddies that coach high schools in the area. We want to do basically a closed camp with you and bring all of our youth to high school guys in and do like that type of focused training and all that.
Awesome.
I think a lot of it has to do with what you want out of it. And we have never wanted to be McDonald's. It doesn't have to be volume. It doesn't have to be. I've been historically a terrible self-promoter in terms of like, hey, this is where we're at, which is just, that's okay. I have a lot of fun with it. And if we can charge people a reasonable amount of money, give them incredible value for what they're getting. Like all those things, like try to, under promise and over deliver on the stuff that you do for people is really the goal. And it's managed to sustain, man. We've got, there's no shortage of, people that we hear from, like, hey, I want to get involved in this, want to train. And you are right about, there's some guys, you named some people, like on the Jersey side, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Cardi family in New Jersey. Coach Cardi, the dad, is just like, he was, although I wasn't directly involved in early on, I started to discover what he was all about. And obviously his sons are prolific coaches now, and just brilliant stuff that he was like, I think got me beat by a long time in terms of like being a presence in this area. And Jeff Trickey used to come from the Midwest. He was from Wisconsin. He used to come and he used to do camps. I was straight up with him. I modeled a lot of what I did after Jeff Trickey because he had a good blueprint there, and we really weren't head to head much in like, cause it's a big world, man. And we weren't really head to head like that. And I don't think he ever wanted to have a million camps, so.
I think that's important too, Chris, right? Like, I think we talk about this all the time, especially now with the social media trainers and the clicks and all this like stuff that's, fluff and whatnot. And it looks really good. And I've got so many kids at this workout or whatever it is. Yeah. I think to like keep the main thing, right? The essence of it all, I think is really the most important part. Like you still want to keep it as one-on-one as possible. And I think that's where you've been able to sustain, especially, in that space where, that's great. We got 50 quarterbacks here, but like how many reps are you really going to get? We talk about the mega camps all the time. Like, that's great. You go there, there's 450 kids, but you get 2 reps or whatever that is. The cookie cutter method of like going through it. No, guys want to feel special in a certain type of way, especially quarterbacks, right? Like they always want to feel that way. So when you can do that and make it as individualized as possible, and then you can also now really get into the nitty gritty of what seems to be like what you really want in and getting out of it. And it's that actual technique, mechanics, that stuff that goes into coaching the position itself, right? Because it's not cookie cutter anymore.
No, it's not. And I never begrudge anybody. Everybody out here has a
absolutely
right to earn a living, and I do understand, especially sometimes for guys who are, depending on the facility that they're located at, they got to pay the freight. They got to be able to pay for, say space they're using, whatever costs might go into the training that they do, but they also, and they deserve to be compensated for their time. I think if I was on the other side of it and I was looking for somebody to train in anything, doesn't just have to be quarterback play, but just ask them, what are the motives of the person who is, or the organization that's providing the training? And you can have multiple motives. Like you can want to be in the business of, building a brand around exposure camps, let's just say that was one of the things. And Coach Schumer, way back to NUC, when you got the thing rolling, it was definitely, that's what it was about, be able to show guys that. But they're also, to go along with it, for me, for my money, if I'm going to pay you money, is to make sure that along the way that I get some kind of benefit beyond exposure, because that's a fleeting thing. And the person, the service provider, doesn't have a whole lot of control about what path that exposure takes, or if it's effective or anything of that. But what they can control is the quality of the experience while you're there. And if they can't guarantee where the exposure will take you, they can at least guarantee the quality of the coaching that you receive while you're there. And then hopefully you develop and you're better because of the experience. So I think that's, as long as you're checking those boxes, I think you're in a good place, in terms of who you're going to train with. Some of the red flags that I typically look out for, if someone's really, really seems pressed and they really want to get as much mileage out of my kid's appearance in their training session, in their camp, etc. It's just a personal preference. I'm not crazy about throwing people on Instagram, on Twitter, and it's not a knock on those that do, because some people, it's central to the way that they run their business. For me, I think it makes it easier for people to think like, all right, this is about technique, about getting better, all of that, if it's not a constant kind of promotional train, just a thought. It's not it's not the only way you can do business, but it's just the way I like to do business,
It's a difficult, there's 2 schools too. Like there's the younger guys, I would say, right? Like if they're breaking into this space,
yes,
they don't know any other way other than to do it that way.
Yep.
Because and I kind of understand it a little bit on the young guy side because they're trying to break in, right?
Yep.
They're trying to make a name.
They're trying to move into like the space that maybe we've been into or some capacity,
No.
right? And they're trying to make a name. And how do you compete with Chris Johnston, right? Who already has existing people that know about him without showcase you. So I don't begrudge that as much, although I do think that people go overboard. Like I think you should ask the parent if it's okay that I'm putting you on there. You know what I mean? Like,
and I'll give you an alternate thought on that if I can. Also, is I definitely think if you grew up as a kid in a digital world and you're, significantly younger than me at this point, like it is natural to say that's the way we used to call people. Like people don't really call a lot now. They text, they DM, they'll post something to somewhere on social, which I definitely understand all of that. I think so this is not just a guy with white in his beard complaining about back in my day, this is the way we did it. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is that along the way, it is difficult to boil down in most of the social formats and the length of engagement that you'll get on a single post, let's say, context. You cannot provide context. So sometimes I will get guys that come to me. I coach at the college level now. I have let's not be naive. My college quarterbacks that I coach, they're not all complete QB clients. Like they do it the complete QB way. These guys go to people all over. And one of the mistakes that I think people make, we can talk about that more, is they'll in some cases go to multiple people who are giving them expertise around playing a position. So in that short format social post world, you don't really have the opportunity to provide context. So I've seen some great stuff that NFL quarterbacks do, and sometimes people who train, well-intentioned, it looks cool, plays great on a 10-second reel, will show a piece of technique and say, this is the way you should do it. And there's 10 things in context that are lost there. Sometimes throwing a football is about the kinetic chain, your relationship to the ground, all the way to the point of release. Like some real biomechanics geek stuff goes into that, and I'm the biggest biomechanics geek. So I will tell you that there are some picking a spot somewhere along that kinetic chain and overemphasizing it in training can disrupt your technique. It can cause injury. It can do lots of things. The second piece is if I have a good, solid high school quarterback, and that's my son or it's my player, and I want to get him some training, emphasizing the things that work for a 6'4", 6'5", 230, 245-pound NFL quarterback for my really good high school quarterback or even college quarterback for that matter. Like basing your training methods on the 0.001% of the guys on the planet who can do it at that high level, to me is unrealistic and leads to poor habits. And we try to mimic things that physically we're not capable of. So those are some of the things when I say around stuff on social platforms. It's great. Get the word out there, man, because the other thing is there was almost nobody around doing it when myself and others started. So the competition wasn't really there. Now it's like AAU basketball. It's like you need a, bag of balls and a whistle and you could be in business. So you have to try to separate yourself from all that noise. So some of the stuff I see online, like on Reels, is really good. And some of it I see, it feels like it has no basis in any kind of reality. Or you talked about individual attention paid. It has no context or relationship to that athlete. Guys are different. One guy's built this way with really long segments. He's got a long torso. This guy has short, stocky legs. Like that stuff matters if you really want to dig into it. And the way that people throw, there are some universal truths that are involved in everyone throwing a football, but there are some things that are really unique and niche to the individual person,
That's a great point. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost in QB training with a lot of the different guys that go in there. Everybody wants to exactly show, this is how Aaron Rodgers now throws and this is how you want to release it, right? Like now you're talking about a guy who's gone through the whole progression in his lifetime of quarterbacking. Like if you looked at Aaron Rodgers, how he threw a ball in at Cal,
not even close.
That's an evolution over time of his, and also within his own body, right? Like his body could do this at this time. Now, I'm not saying that, how Jeff Tedford taught QB training obviously is maybe outdated, right? Compared to now, but there's still an evolution of how the quarterback development of that individual over time. Their body changes. They're slower. They're faster.
Yep.
There's things they can do at this stage that they couldn't do at this stage.
Yes.
Their mind, getting their mind to then do, one of the things that's always hard with younger athletes is, and I was just in a discussion with my son's basketball coach. We were talking about one of the players. There's some kids that their mind's telling them to do something. Their feet and their hands and their body can't do it. Right.
Yeah.
So you could see them, they want it. They get frustrated because they know what has to be done. They can't physically, strength-wise, or whatever it is, can't do it yet, right? So there's a process to everything, and then you got to back those kids off on that standpoint and start back to where they can go and then move them forward. I think that's important on quarterback. I have a son that's quarterback that plays quarterback.
I know a guy who does training if you need him, Dave.
Yeah, yes. You guys make me have to drive all the way up there. That's the problem. That's the only problem. Believe me, by the way, we're desperate. I can tell you we're desperate because there's really not as, like, North Jersey, you guys are obviously more flooded.
We talk about this all the time.
But we're not flooded. We are not flooded down where we live down the shore.
Good.
And even less where Derek
Central,
lives. I have some by
Central
us.
South. Yeah.
There's nothing where Derek is. And right? Am I wrong, Derek? There's one guy, maybe, I think.
Maybe.
But down where he is in Brick, that's an open market, by the way, just from a business standpoint from there. But where I am, they're starting to get a little bit more.
Yeah.
My roommate from college was Shane Stafford, and he learned really when he went to play arena under Steve DeBerg, and Steve DeBerg and Jeff Christensen were good friends. I had a relationship from all that, so I kind of had, I don't know whether that's considered old school their style or not now, but that's originally how I taught my son, right? So really, it's really like bring the rotate the hips and bring the back foot forward to be even and get the ball mostly up and out, right? But everybody else teaches things differently. So I've gone to a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And I still come back to and I actually think all the guys are good within the realm of what they do.
Yes.
But I do think that guys in general so focus on the way that they think a quarterback should be played in their head, and don't look at the individual. They have how they think they can throw best,
right,
or what they think is the methodology. Maybe they see Aaron Rodgers or something. And I'm not saying none of it's wrong to an extent. None of it's wrong. But a lot of times I notice that the younger coaches mirror their own body type. So if they're a taller guy, my son's a little bit lankier, so. I didn't mean to do this, but I started to kind of go to a guy that would fit more his body type because I know that guy teaches that way. And the guys who were not that one guy's better at teaching quarterback or one guy knows the position better or is a better player at it, but a shorter guy was teaching a different style, right? And I'm like, I don't know if that mirrored my son's body type, how he could kind of get it out that way, right?
Yeah.
And so just having gone to a few places, one of the things I thought when we had on Balin the other day, Derek,
right?
I did like what Balin talked about footwork being his primary thing because of the exact thing that Chris is now talking about, because everybody's body type is different. He has to figure out how to adjust to their body type for the throwing motion.
Yeah,
that's Balin Trujillo. I don't know if you know him, Balin Trujillo from Florida. But
I've heard that name. Yep.
But he said that's why he kind of mainly a lot of his focus is on the footwork and getting the feet the right way, because of the fact that everybody's body type is different.
For sure. I think your relationship to the ground is really crucial, because that's the start, as I said, of the kinetic chain. And guess what? As you know, that's not just for quarterbacks. That's for every position. Like if you have offensive linemen who consistently are having difficulty having good tempo and pace on down blocks, well, it's probably going to start with their feet. You know what I mean? So it's just like false steps, inefficient movement, all those things. So I think that's really important. The other thing that came to mind while you were speaking coach was the human body is undefeated, man. I understand. I had somebody say to me, I had a parent say to me a few years back, said, hey, my son did some work also with this other guy, and his truly meant well. He said, some of the techniques he teaches me, some of the modern stuff, you know what I mean? And I said, all right, and I just smiled. So that's great, man. I'm glad to hear it. But what it made me think back to was the human body for X number of thousand years is basically about the same as it was. And so none of the factors involved with that have changed at all. Like quarterbacks are not. You can make the argument, obviously training has changed. And so guys might have some more muscularity. The frame for some guys might be able to, but essentially between the 1970s and the 2020s, there's not a significant difference in the way the human body, really negligible difference in the way the human body functions, maybe some training stuff. But that being said, the only thing that can change is approach, and perception can evolve over time and can change. But I that's why I always say those tried and true principles about there's got to be some kind of weight transfer. It has to be some kind of drive that happens initiated by us putting pressure on the ground. That's the start. No matter who you're talking to, we are not standing in a garbage can while we throw a football. Like, it's just not the way we work. We're going to make movement toward where we're delivering the ball. How much movement you make, debate about the back hip, the throwing hip, and the throwing foot, whether they come through or not. I could go into that for a very, very extensive period with you, but I think really what it's about is checking those big boxes. And I think, as you said, previous guest said, it's brilliant to start with the ground. You're in a really good shape, I think, if you do that, because everything else from there, much of it, if you can stick to the few basic points, driving into the ground, some element of weight transfer, some element of trunk rotation, and then a sensible approach to release that most often allows your quarterback of all shapes and sizes to be able to get the ball out. Once you check those boxes, the rest is style, and everybody's got a different style. For a guy with short, fat fingers, or not say moderate, intermediate size hands, let's say, I'm going to say like, hey, I'm going to teach you the somewhat of a conventional method where I want that index finger to come off the ball last. If you have NFL-sized hands that are just massive, you can get away with a lot in terms of where you release the football. Number one, if you're 6'5", you can get away with a lot. And if you measure close to 10-inch hands at a combine or at a pro day,
you're pretty.
You can cut under the football and maybe not see as dramatic an impact versus a guy my size, say 5'10", like just, with probably average size hand, grip on the football. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
which goes back to the point, Chris, of like everything being so individualized, right?
Yeah.
Like even your measurables, like go off. We're not saying like, look, we understand that measurables play a role in, the initial, hey, I'm looking for this size quarterback at this level of ball, right?
Yes.
But that's, again, majority of guys that are working for this are middle school, high school, right?
Yep.
Like this is more of what we're working with. We're not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. We're saying there's a different approach for how each of you go about it. That I think attention to detail, again, circle back.
Yep.
It's not cookie cutter. You go to a camp where there's 20 quarterbacks. One guy's teaching you how to hold the football, how to throw it, how the release should be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that might work for 5 of these 20, right? And which level are you aiming at? Are you aiming at the guy that has NFL size hands? That's going to be, are you aiming for that higher level? Or where majority of guys sit right around that lower middle, like hit the masses. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I think that's a key part to it. And the approach of that, a lot of trainers, coaches, like they don't factor that into it of, all right, what am I actually looking at here? Right. Especially if you're a high school coach, right? Where, all right, you have 3-4 quarterbacks in your program, freshman to senior year. Well, they may be 3 different dudes, or this guy right now is only a freshman and his hands are this size. By the time he gets to a senior, it's now this size. So to be able to adapt and coach each aspect and hit all of them, you have to be knowledgeable and understand that.
Yeah, we so one of the things that we've done with Complete QB is we launched recently a course called Coaching Quarterback Passing Mechanics, and the intended audience is really anyone who has an interest in it, but it could be the guy who's coached O-line for 25 years and all of a sudden he finds himself thrust into the position where he's got to coach the quarterbacks for the first time. It could be the guy coaching quarterbacks for 30 plus years. Could be the dad who's like, I have no clue. I want to get a clue. Like really a wide audience. And one of the things that we talk about is in the course is give a little bit of thought, invest a little bit of thought to what bucket your quarterback might fit into. And we gave a few prototypes or archetypes, I should say. Like, so we said, the pure passer, the guy who's like, looks like he was born to live in the pocket. Then you've got the guy who's the hybrid type who can move around a little bit and he can, do some things for you, but not purely a pocket passer. And then you've got, which if you've coached high school football for any length of time, you've lived through this, like the guy who's an H-back or a wide out. And you were like, oh my God, this kid, I have a kid who's a good baseball player who was my quarterback. He decided to focus on baseball. I just lost my quarterback. Or God forbid somebody got injured. Now I got to turn somebody into a quarterback in 3 weeks. Like, so all that stuff is a factor. Your scheme is a factor. I think, so to get really like down into the weeds with how we coach it, it's similar to what a lot of good baseball minds, like pitching coaches, have come up with, like phases of throwing. And I've seen models where there's 4, 5, 6. We do 6 phases of throwing because we technically, the base and the way your relationship to the ground is technically not a phase of throwing, but we include it as one of our phases because it's that important. If you can, it's not necessary for you to turn out robots. Not every quarterback you work with has to be your personal Frankenstein that you built. Like it just the way as I've matured
actually makes your job easier if he's not, right? Like you don't have to build the entire thing. Like let's focus on some of the things that you do well. And now let's build on that off of your strengths, which to me adds to the confidence factor. And I think that is one of the most pivotal undercoached aspects of that position itself. Like that guy's got to know, like, I'm the guy, right? It's why I think it's one of the most difficult positions, if not the most difficult position in sports itself. You have to be confident almost to a fault in my eyes.
I would agree. And I think 95% of the guys that have ever come to me with training don't really need me to show them how to throw a football. They have a pre-existing aptitude. That's why they're there. It's usually refinement on 1 or 2 things. I look at the 2 biggest factors that I look at are injury prevention and efficiency. Those are the 2 biggest things that I look at. So if I see someone who really constantly, because there's no trunk rotation and they got a heavy tilt down to their non-throwing side when they throw, and they get their arm in a position where I call it turning your arm into a lacrosse stick, and the anterior of the shoulder really starts to feel disrupted, start to feel symptoms like tendonitis to the inside of the elbow, like those
all the elbow stuff,
you can call out, like that are, let's get you to a spot where I'm not totally restyling what you do, but I'll feel comfortable if you just get to a point where you're not going through repetitive movements that are causing injury. And that all has to do, sometimes I hear the term muscle memory, and muscle memory is true. But really what we're talking about with quarterbacks are motor patterns. And a guy who really helped me understand that, he actually figured into our course pretty prominently. If you guys ever have a chance to check out Eric DeGotti, he has a good presence. We talked about Instagram. Eric has an amazing presence on Instagram. It's at Eric DeGotti. It's DAGATI. The guy, if you get a chance to give him a follow, he's got very, very good stuff. He's, I would say, I hate saying the best, the most, but in terms of people that I've dealt with, he's the best movement specialist that I've ever had the fortune of, being. He's another Jersey guy, North Jersey guy, and he's brilliant. But one of the things he helped me really come to a fuller understanding of was that not just muscle memory, because I think a lot of my training where it was flawed early on, if you try to go back and critique what it is that you do and how you can get better, was put a big emphasis on, because you're in a camp environment versus a one-on-one environment. It's like, okay, we're going to do this movement here, and not having that nuance quarterback to quarterback, and realizing it's not just the creating this specific muscle memory, but like how does it fit in your overall motor pattern, like the way that your body works. Like some quarterbacks, when you look at them, will be very poor at generating rotation in their trunk. Sometimes in this era of like snap answers and snap results, somebody say, oh, their core is weak, like, which may or may not be true when we look at factors like flexibility, mobility, stability, all of that. But it also might be something that precedes that has them in a position where they're not even in a position to adequately and appropriately rotate their trunk as a throw of football. So could be a bunch of reasons for that. We'll have to do another show, another interview on all that stuff.
Yeah.
if we really want to geek out with the mechanic stuff. But my point in saying all that is just to, I guess, revisit what you guys both made the point that it's got to be individualized to an extent. There are some universal truths and big buckets you want to check off, but there's also, there has to be a big emphasis on the individual, because sometimes, this is last thing I'll say on this particular point, there are guys who maybe, for an example, in general, I will say that I typically would like my quarterback's elbow to at least be parallel to his armpit. My experience, I wouldn't just call it anecdotally, but over a long period of time, over thousands of quarterbacks that I've watched, is the guys that have their elbow at a point where their elbow is parallel to their armpit as they come through to release a football, with the exception of physical freaks like massive human beings who can get away with it. For the most part, guys report a better level of long-term comfort and avoidance of injury and stuff when their elbow is there. So I would even like it a little bit higher. You get a little skinny guy like me. I find that if my elbow is clearing my armpit, the throw is more effortless for me, right? But sometimes you're going to run into a quarterback who doesn't fit that mold for you in that particular piece about the way he releases the football. He's just a notch below his armpit when he releases the ball. If he's pain-free over a length of period of time, if he's effective at being able to deliver the football without the ball being batted down at the line of scrimmage, leave him the hell alone, man, because there was a time when I would be like, nope, we got to fix that.
Right.
It's like you don't show up at the mechanic like, can you find something wrong with my car? Guess what? They're going to find something
which
wrong.
is a lot of times I feel like what a lot of people are looking for, right? They're like,
Yeah.
hey, he's been told that it's this, or he's been told that his arm angle, right? Like I always go back
They all
to like,
now want to try to throw like Aaron Rodgers
or Mahomes, right? Where, you know,
like,
I
where
just
he's
look
all the way like this, because Aaron's now doing this kind of, he's changed his style.
well, and I think like I always go back to like the Tim
So
Tebow,
I think
right?
I
Like
think,
everybody
what's
tried to change Tim Tebow's throwing motion.
Josh
and all of
Allen's
that
doing
stuff.
this too now. That's the other reason why.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Good.
when I was taught QB, right, from a run and shoot offensive perspective as a young buck, right, like it was, hey, you got to be like over the top, bring it down, right, like above, because why? But I look back now and then you look at it and you say, okay, well, we were taught that because almost every QB that went through my alma mater, Butler High School, was undersized, 5'8", right, couldn't really see over the line. It's also why everything was taught to be on a half roll and set up inside the leg of the tackle, and that's where your throw came from, because we couldn't just straight drop back. That wasn't what they had worked with. Now, when there was a quarterback that was over 6 foot or was your prototypical measurable type of QB, their stuff changed, right? It was, so I, as a young kid, I realized, okay, every coach is going to coach it different based on who we have, you know, and that's where it goes back to. And I've always approached coaching in that manner. And I try to tell the young guys and teach them or coach them up on it as young coaches of like, hey man, I get you're working with a group of guys, but every one of your guys are going to do things differently, and don't hold them back. You want to teach the system the same, right? But and the techniques across the board. But if you now have a guy, you know, that does something a little better, doing it a different way, don't let your pride get in the way of success, right? Like talk about Nick Saban in terms of teaching DBs, like backpedaling. Like he used to be a square up guy, right? And now he's had a guy, you know, that was okay. He can tilt and crossover run and still get to the same coverage that he needs to. He's just better at that. Well, I'm not going to like, you know, pound the pavement and say, you got to do it this way. And now a really good player all of a sudden becomes a not so good player because he's in his head trying to worry about something that he has to work on or can't do very well. Like, what are we talking about? We just overcoach it. And that's, I would think, where a lot of guys with social media and all of these things, because sometimes there's so much information that we just get overloaded, and now we're trying to do so many things because it's out there and you feel like you have to, and you don't have to coach it that much. Like relax, okay? You know, like take it one step at a time and figure out what works for that individual, and now the good of the group. You may have to coach a little bit more because now you're coaching different stuff for each guy, but isn't that what it's all about? Like, aren't you trying to get the most out of every player for the good of the group? Like,
absolutely, and I think you mentioned pride. I think anytime, my worst days as a coach over many like I guess more than a quarter of a century. Like my
When you put it that way, right? It's a long time. Dave does it all the time. Dave's like, dude, I've been in this for, oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm going backwards. I just coach youth football now, so
I love it, man. You guys are going straight to heaven.
Which
man.
I go back to it. Yeah, it's like what I used to say about teaching. You're a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
God bless you. You know what I mean?
Man.
Like you're a second grade teacher teaching kids how to read. Like
what I was gonna say about the pride thing when you mentioned it was my worst days as a coach definitely involved the ego, and just being like, it's got to be this way because it's the way I had planned it.
And I think that's natural, though. All of us have some type of that as a higher level athlete. Like we all have some type of pride or that sense of like, it's got to be our way because it's the best way.
No.
It's the same reason when I used to go to clinics as a young guy, like, hey, I'm not going to listen to a high school coach. What the hell does he know? Right. Like I want to listen to the college guy, the NFL guy.
Yes.
When really the high school guys give you the most because they've been through it and they're working with the least, Hey, I can train this guy when I have all these bells and whistles and I got the treadmill that can do this or whatever. But like, how can you make it work when that's not there? So I think the pride thing, it's just part of a thing, the ego thing, right? Like it's definitely lessened with age. The more years I coach and do all this other kind of stuff, like I don't care, man. Like let's just win.
I think this had to be like, this got to be going back close to 20 years ago. I went to it was Friday night, I think, and it was like 2 back-to-back in the old days of parochial 3 and 4. Those 2 group games were at Giant Stadium back-to-back. And I remember I was with a small group, like 5 or 6 coaching buddies of mine, and one of the guys who was there is an old school guy who's won a ton of a lot, like more than 2 could fill up like state championship rings as a high school coach, and a brilliant dude. He coached the bigs, he coached mostly offensive line. And I'll never forget a lesson I learned was that what you talked about, sometimes people put too much emphasis, coaches put too much emphasis on the source and not just being open ears, open mind to stuff that's being presented to them. This guy grilled. He was sitting next to a youth football coach who was sitting in an area near us, and he got engaged. He just liked something that this guy said, and he started grilling this guy about what he teaches kids, what he thinks is important. They were talking O-line technique. And this guy, I think, coached like 10 or 11-year-olds. He was like and this guy the guy had no idea who he was talking to. The guy had no gear on that said where he coached. He didn't have any of his rings on. None of that.
Right. Wasn't about it. Wasn't about that.
He was grilling this guy. And I remember thinking, I said to one of my friends who was with me, I was like, wow, like that's a coach, man. Like this guy is, coaching at the youth level, but the guy was a bright dude and he had good reasoning and sound reasoning for the stuff that he believed in. And, I think probably in the total balance of things, the youth guy was probably going to learn probably a lot more from the guy who had all these years at a high level of high school and college. But my point was he had something to bring to the table too.
Always.
And this guy was willing to hear it. So from that day forward, I remember that being like, it really sticks out in my brain as a time where I was like, don't ever big time anybody or think you know better, because,
damn right.
Don't forget, like all this quarterback stuff, and I've coached I've had those days. My quarterback threw 4 picks and we got shut out. Like, so you better stay humble. And if you're not, like, if you coach like actual football in addition to training, the actual games where the other team has 11 guys too, they'll humble you. At some point, you'll get humbled. Like that's
because they get coached too, and they put the same time in that you do. You know what I mean? So look, it's definitely something that as I've gone up in years coaching wise, like sometimes like, man, they just call the right play at the right time when you didn't. You know what I mean? Like they work at it too. Sometimes you really have to tip your cap and be like, hey, kudos to the other team. You know what I'm saying? Like, whereas in my younger days, it wouldn't have been like that.
True.
I think that one of the things that you touched on is that like in sports, and one of the things that happens a lot with quarterback training or development of athletes is that everybody, like you said, thinks that they're the smartest guy in a room, and sometimes they are. Sometimes
you're right.
in that room, sometimes they are. But you could always learn no matter how much you know, right?
Yep.
And so,
absolutely.
And things always. What I found most amazing about sports and positional stuff and team related stuff, there's always things that are always evolving, and it's there's tried and true, and then there's evolutions, right? And one of the things that especially over the last since my son started doing stuff and I start like really watching him, like I would say like the old speed and strength guy has been awakened on just watching him, right? So, that was the world I was really first in.
Yep.
And like I see all these things, like I'm like, oh wow, and I research them, and obviously his podcast is a huge part of it.
I was just going to reference that.
So many people, so that's also kind of awakened a lot of thought process.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's
every day, right? When we talk to these guys, like something always comes up, Dave, where we just always talk about it. Like, hey, there's just something we learn, and what we may have looked at something a certain way, and now we talk to somebody from wherever, whoever, and now it's okay, like let's take a look at it.
Yep.
And one of the themes that like come up over and over again, I think, is like the ground up, meaning like it's become more and more apparent that most things, well, if your sport is a leg related sport. I mean, I'm sure there are sports, if you're shooting a gun, I don't know if that's ground up. Like if you're a pistol shooter, I'm not sure. Maybe it is,
Yeah, your feet
I make the
have to be a
argument
certain
that
way.
everything we do, if our feet are touching the ground, it's a ground up sport. But that's yeah.
No, it might. Yeah, exactly. Even swimmers might be ground up, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but and that might be true for everything. But within the world that I like, kind of around, I more and more you realize like the ground up is really and then everybody's body, because the ground, everybody kind of, even though feet are different, everyone has different feet, but the ground is where everything begins.
Yes.
And then from there, everything begins to radically change in every person, right?
Yeah.
So as you move up the body,
and that might change as your age changes, right?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about if you're going one is 5th and 6th grade.
You just talked about Aaron Rodgers being different from when he was in his 20s to now.
Right.
He's knocking on the door like early 40s. You know what I mean? So that is absolutely true. That over time, things will change. Sometimes it's just passage of time that'll make it. You know what?
Right. And he's the greatest example.
To
but you know what I mean? Like you look at him and how his career has spanned and whatnot. And he's the first to I'm sure he's the first, I've heard him speak on it before, of like how he's had to change based off of like, hey, I'm 40 something years old now. I can't rely on that arm strength, athletic ability, right? Like, like injuries, like what comes along again, and then throw the technology stuff into it and all of the like what's the word I'm looking for? Like the
recovery, all of that.
Absolutely. Like all of the other stuff that when he started throwing a football back in the day wasn't part of any of it. And now it is, just based off of just studying or learning new things, right? Like it's all part of it, where you constantly have to keep, reworking it. Because if you're still doing the same stuff and expecting different results based off of that, like that's insanity, right? That's the definition of it.
It is, definitely. And so one other thing that occurred to me while both of you guys were making those comments was that, so we are in an age where right now we have access to such a volume of information that so the reason that I typically say, if you're comfortable with a methodology, and probably particularly a trainer, let's say, that's working with your quarterback, stick to him. I normally, if I have somebody approach me and say, like, he works with so-and-so, I'd also like him to work with you. I say, you happy with so-and-so? You answer yes. Is he pain-free? Is he getting better over time? Stick with him. Don't come see me. And not like, again, probably business 101. I probably just failed. I flunked out of business school in 10 minutes. But
no doubt.
But it is, in terms of like that person's development, that athlete's development, is probably very true, that if they've got that sweet spot and it's working for them, that they should stick there. So to be able to discern when we see all these things flooding into our brain about this is a good approach, that's a good approach, it really takes a high level of discipline, I think, to really parse things out and be like, all right, this is useful and I can apply this. I guess my rule for that would be try to apply things that are not disruptive, and when you're around people the temptation when you're around people who are brighter than you, who have like more of a grasp on a subject area, or you just feel like they're further along in their development, or they're just intellectually are just really unique people. Sometimes the urge is to say, like, I'm going to grab that and drop it in here with my guys. But sometimes that can lead to a very cluttered philosophy, when you go into it. And I remember when I went back and got my master's degree probably maybe 12 years ago in kinesiology and human movement. And I remember one of the first things I said was like, I've been coaching quarterbacks for whatever it was, 15 years or whatever. And at that point, and I was like, I shouldn't be coaching anybody's quarterback. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, that's all I remember thinking.
Right.
I was like, these people are brilliant, man, in the way they
Right.
understand human movement and all that. And it's funny because it gives you that moment of like real humility, and you're like, all right, there's so much that I don't know. I think what it unlocks for you is that you really can get better from that point. Like, we've all known, not just coaching, anybody in any line of work, any field, who they just get, this is what they do, and that's all they do. But they're stuck in neutral too. Like, this is the way to do it. Like, you know, maybe if you own a pizzeria, that's a healthy thing. You know what I mean? You stay right there, and like that pizza's going to be the same for 40 years and everybody loves it, says it's the best in town. But if it's something like where there's so many external variables and value, like different variables that present in live athletic contests and all that, like you kind of have to evolve. You know what I mean? So over time, you got to refine the way that you're teaching things. But it's also a tricky game, because right now, like, I go into like a YouTube feed and it's like the amount of stuff that pops up. You can imagine what my feed probably looks like with all the suggested YouTube videos. And I can make a case. I could probably give you examples. We talked about maybe getting together sometime, another, part two, and saying, hey, let's compare and contrast some of the stuff we see. And I can give you a guy that teaches this method over here versus this guy that's the polar opposite in some ways, some elements. But I can make an argument that both of them, it's rooted in some truth. And I think there's some effectiveness in both of them. But it's just making sure that you're constantly refining and being able to apply it to your individual athletes. It's not the easiest of jobs there. All while, if you're training, trying to make a living doing this and all, like, this is live TV, man. Like, you're doing this, it's unfolding every day in front of your eyes, probably as a trainer, probably 9 months a year. So it's not the easiest job in the world, but it's fun getting there. And it's also fun when you feel yourself not being static, not being in the exact same spot. I've had times and moments along the way here in all these years where I felt like something about this piece of technique or whatever, that it's just stale. Like, I need to revisit it and figure out, like, convince myself why I'm teaching that still, and if it still makes sense, that type of stuff. So all rooted back to being humble and not having a huge ego, I think,
Absolutely. I'm curious on the mentality of quarterbacks that you were trying to shape. Like,
yeah.
So it's one thing, obviously, the physical components and development, and but the mentality and the mindset and the ability to learn. What do you think that the quarterbacks, and obviously depending on their age, they need to know different things, but what is the mentality that you think your quarterbacks need to have, and what type of, this is always a debate at quarterback, and I'm one of the only people that'll bring it up, but I'm very big that your quarterbacks have to have a certain level of intellectual capability, right?
Yeah.
Now there is a certain amount of sports IQ that people have, and there are some guys that may not be brilliant academically, quote unquote, but also have good sports IQ.
Yeah.
But ideally, you want your quarterbacks to have a certain level of intelligence, and I think guys move around that a lot, and I don't know why, but I think it's an important issue that quarterback, like, guys won't talk about it as much because there's a lot of, people always get into
if they talk about that, Dave, then they'll lessen their but they'll lessen their clientele base, right? Like they'll kind of
I'm like, hey, I don't care what color you are, okay? I need my quarterbacks to have a certain level of capabilities intellectually in order to process information. And there's both. There's obviously sports IQ and there's intellectual IQ. And ideally, you want maximal in both. Most people aren't maximal in both, but you need whatever's best for your team. But talk about what quarterbacks need to be able to do in order to succeed. Because one of the things that Balin brought this up, actually, that I thought was really the guy did not pull any punches. The quarterbacks that win Super Bowls are ones that have the capability to stay in the pocket and deliver the ball. Okay. Not saying they can't take off and run, because obviously now in the game, you still when necessary, you need the capability to run, especially, as you move up the levels. I'm not saying that high school, you could probably have a guy that runs all the time or a guy that, but as you move up the levels, you need a guy that can really kind of deliver the ball when needed under pressure. Talk about what you think quarterbacks need to be able to know, need to be able to understand. And obviously intelligence is fluid in the sense that you can learn these things. The beauty of the world now, not just YouTube, but with AI, like I could go type in, explain to me cover 2. And get a baseline of cover 2, like a good baseline,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
So talk about that and what they need to learn and what they need to know in order to be a quarterback.
I think we'll start with characteristics. I think this is going to sound real new age, but bear with me for a second. I think if you got a quarterback with some emotional maturity is a really big thing, because what comes with that is the guy who it's like that perfect combination of they got a healthy ego, that they know that they should be in charge. They know they're capable of it. They're a leader of men. And in some cases, women. I've coached a couple young ladies over the years, so it's like sometimes they can lead people, and they're and it's because I would say the secret sauce with quarterback. Before we get into all like some of the other capability stuff, they have the ability to let other people feel that it's not all about them, meaning the individual. Like the quarterback's not like a me guy or me person. It's not just all about me. That I actually care that other people are contributing to this. I care that, other people might have the spotlight in a given moment, et cetera. Like just having that kind of emotional maturity, like not being able to keep your calm, keep your cool, not get a 15-yard penalty, not when a receiver runs the wrong route and you throw a ball into a cornerback's chest and everybody in the stands is like, that quarterback's terrible, man. You saw that pick. Meanwhile, his sight adjust from his receiver is supposed to be an outbreak, and that should have been an easy first down, but instead the quarterback looks totally incompetent. So you guys have seen, I'm sure multiple examples of the contrasting type of quarterbacks. The guy who is like runs off the field and it's just like, like claps it up or whatever, and then gets close to that guy and like, you messed that up, man. That was supposed to, but he does it quietly. He does it in a way that communicates it clearly. And the guys who need to know, versus the guy who has to throw the hands in the air and make a big, pops the helmet off, and he's pointing at the other guy so that everybody knows it wasn't my fault, it was that guy's fault. Yep. I'm always going to gravitate toward the quarterback that is secure enough in themselves to not have to make sure that everybody knows that they're always right. It's just, to me that's like such a baseline characteristic as a human being. Like insert profession here, you'd want someone to be able to do that. But I joke with my quarterbacks all the time and say, you guys are the manager at McDonald's. Like you guys are in charge of this operation, so you can't be, your hair can't be on fire because something went wrong. You got to have some sort of like even keelness to you. That's just like you can manage all this stuff. To the aptitude thing that you talked about, intellectual.
Like I want you to have emotions, right? Like, and I want you to continue. But I'm saying I want my quarterback to have emotions. I want him to be juiced when there's a good play. But at the same time, I also don't want you to be so down when it's a bad play that you can't come back from it. Like, and everybody understands, because it's such a in the spotlight type of position. Like everybody's looking at you anyway, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's why I think
bring your back to Zen.
Quickly. Correct. And that's again why I think it's one of the hardest positions to play or do in itself, is because like things go good, you're the hero. But things go bad, you're usually the blame guy, irregardless of what else went on. Like, we know that guy missed his block. We know the receiver didn't run the right route. You know what I'm saying? We knew the coach called the wrong play, but you still, like, you're the focal point of it. And you're the guy
that earns respect from people. When a quarterback says the words, "That's my fault," we'll come right back. That is an instant respect builder. It's like it's a cumulative effect. Like, I see it in the body language of other people, like other skill guys in particular. When you're in a routes on air period and the guy throws like 2 bad out of 5 bad, like just terrible throws, but he's verbal about it. He's like, "Yo, that's me, man. I gotta be better with that." It just, those little moments, like it just builds up the level of trust and confidence and respect that guys have for that quarterback who can do that. To your point in your original question, Coach Schulman, when you asked about, like the intelligence, like that kind of like what's the requisite aptitude and all that. What I've found is I've had guys with a range of what I would call measurable intelligence. Like some guys,
Right.
just average intelligence guys. And so
Right.
I've coached a few guys who are just brilliant, like way, way significantly more
Right.
intelligent.
Like you're like, oh,
And so, yeah, like they're the guys who are like 2 steps ahead of you, and they're like, "Coach, don't you think we should do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, we should do that." I was gonna
it
get
sounds
there.
great. Make
Yeah,
you
no
look
doubt.
really
So-
good, right? They make you look like a genius.
No doubt. So I think that those guys are. I don't. So for me, it's usually if we're teaching in a sequential way, meaning that like there's you go through that rhythm of like they've seen it in some kind of presentation format, they've met with you, and it's been reviewed. Like with an asterisk on this, because I understand there's some guys out there that coach in really difficult situations where everything that I'm describing, you may have limited access to technology, you may have limited access to meeting space, all that. I'm talking like 70 degrees and sunny, all is perfect. If you could go through, mimic some kind of routine, that is, we give it in some kind of presentation format so they can review. We have the opportunity to review with them in an academic setting, i.e. in a classroom or a meeting space. We can walk through it in a semi-live place, and we can rep it like live on the field in kind of a, not like live full 11 on 11 type scenario. If we can continually go through that pattern, like that workflow and everything that we present, you're giving guys a chance to, I think, succeed. The brilliant guys, it might seem slow for them, but the reason I like that approach is because the guy who is closer to the average intelligence, or even maybe less than average and academically, if you go too quickly, then that guy is going to probably start to fall victim to feeling like inferior, feeling not capable, all that.
Yep.
And then it becomes a snowball, because now you have a quarterback who lacks confidence, who you already is not the brightest guy in the world. So the guy starts to feel like an imposter, So I think if you can always present in that like a steady workflow with your quarterbacks all the time, then the average intelligence guy is going to feel in some ways on an even playing field with the brilliant guy, because you all went through an install cycle or workflow together. And I think it gives you a better chance of propping up the guy who maybe is not your brightest guy, but is, and maybe not have the highest football IQ, that you're birthing, that you're like really helping him get to a point where he feels confident because you control the tempo and the pace of how you release things to him. So I think it's tough to really, we're football coaches. I know I'm not qualified to say like really like, hey, this guy is this intelligence versus that intelligence, but you have some instinct. You have some like a gut feeling on people. And so, but you can normalize and standardize everything and just say like, this is the way we're going to present in our teaching approach. And there are times,
Correct.
there always are times. Sometimes when you do that, there's still the guy who he just ain't got it. Like he's just, quarterback's not for him. And I always tell guys like quarterbacks, I try to say other coaches, as a quarterback coach, I say like, we're going to see if we can maybe move this guy around a little bit, because for whatever reason, the pace with which he needs to have reaction time, if we're in a really controlled environment and over an extended period of time, he's having difficulty having those concepts click and be able to do it in a question and answer session. Like, what are you doing here? Those are flags. Those are signs that like when things are really moving, there's a good chance this guy's not going to be able to react in real time when the bullets are flying 11 on 11, So I just think that there's ways we can increase our chances of success, but it's never going to totally eliminate those difficult conversations you might have to say to somebody like, I think you're a safety, you know what I mean?
And there's different stages when that can happen. Obviously, how many kids who played high school quarterback play a different position in college, right?
Yep.
They were really good. Maybe they were more of a runner. Maybe they had a big arm and they were huge, and then that won't work. At the next level, and they were playing like deep. Like there was a guy at Oklahoma that was a quarterback in high school, ended up playing like left tackle. So I think there's. I think it's kind of like an X and Y axis, like aptitude, skill goes up like this.
Yes.
And then there's a learning curve, like how fast they move along the learning curve.
Yep.
And then obviously, and then, those things are really important. And then the final element to it all is like a reaction time. Like how well do they react to be able to deliver the ball, which is something that I don't even know if that's a speed thing, like as far as how quick they can get rid of the ball, or their ability to just have great reaction and get the ball out. Like that's
and anticipation,
anticipation, right? Yeah. Reaction and anticipation.
Yeah.
It's
just a quick point about that before we move on to anything. Like, so that I also think that I've encountered more guys that were a lot more guys not emotionally equipped to play quarterback than intellectually equipped to play quarterback, because there is something about it, like all eyes being on you. Like it does, people who know nothing, the guy with now there's some guys eating hot dogs on the 50-yard line by the press box who know what they're talking about, but there's probably a lot more that don't. But who's the lightning rod for criticism? Always the coach, the quarterback. Like those are the guys those guys get verbally abused, and those guys, some people are like perfectly equipped to have that grit and that thick skin to be able to deal with that. And then there's just other guys who are like, like one of the coaching points that I've always made. And so having been going into my 4th year in coaching in college, and one of the things that I try to always impress to our guys is you guys probably came from all different types of coaching backgrounds, like style of coaching, approach, all of that. And one of the things that I think is important to remember, it's as important now as it was when you were 8 or 9 years old, when you put pads on for the first time. Like if you think back to when you were a little kid and a coach snapped on you for the first time, like, and especially like if you're my age, like there was like very few rules about etiquette in the 1980s. They just want, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so when a coach would snap at you, like I was the type of kid that would internalize it and get like hurt feelings initially. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and the message would be lost initially. And you have to, I think, to wind up being able to progress as a football athlete, you have to learn how to separate the message from the delivery, because sometimes the delivery can really sting, but the content is gold, man. Like it really did matter. Like the stuff that he was telling you was really, really good. Quarterback has to be able to deal with you have to deal with people being babies because they're not getting the ball. You have to deal with, you may have a totally unreasonable coach who's just like doesn't know how to manage personalities and just tearing you apart. You have to deal, especially if it's in an environment where like the fan base really cares, like people abuse verbally from the stands. Like there's a lot for we're all coaching young people here for the most part. So it's like
my nieces have just recently gone through it as group 1 small high school basketball, like younger, they're sophomores, and they're the better players. And I've had to express and explain to not only them, but their parents, right? Like that, hey, the better you are, the more shit you're going to hear and you're going to take, irregardless of whether it's true or not. 100%. Spin it and take it, use it as fuel. Like, hey, if they're talking shit, then we're winning. We're doing really good, or we're doing better, right? Like, not personal, like they're attacking my kid. More of like, hey, that's a compliment if they really want to talk that much shit to an individual, right? And that's as a sophomore in high school, like
use it to drive you too.
Right? It's fuel. It is fuel for the fire, right? Like
that you can teach. I think that's a great point, because kids.
I think you just have to make people aware of that. And younger kids are brutal, Dave. You talked about it all the time. The younger, and just because you're good, like now that you're a better player, now kids start to recognize that, and that they want to bring you down because they're not on that level. And that's tough to deal with.
I'm a different cat because I'm an older parent, dealing with like when I talk to youth kids, for example, I would say some parents love it. Some parents don't. Most of the parents do love it, actually, but there's some that can't handle it. Like I always tell them, I'm not a babysitter. Like you want to bring your kid to babysit, like go hire a babysitter. Okay. Like I'm here to help kids be the best they can be. We're going to have a great time doing it. With younger kids, you got to do that more. Right.
Yes.
But I'm not a babysitter. Like I like, just because I volunteer to help out in a lot of areas, like I'm not a babysitter. Like, I'm spending my time here too. I tell kids this at 10 years old. I tell them this. These coaches here are spending their time to help you.
Yes.
They're not here to babysit you. Your mom and dad can hire a babysitter for $40 an hour and let you run around, do whatever the hell you want, and bring your friends over, do whatever the hell you want. That's okay. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like I have no problem with that. If I'm here and I'm here to help you and doing the best I can to help you, your job is to be here to try to get better. And I think it's this generation of parents, it's which is really more kind of in Derek's age range. I'm a little bit out of that. I'm older, and more
than me. I'm older for where I'm at, right? Well, when it comes to my kids,
your age range, you're going to be more like me down the line. But I'm saying most of the ones that are my kids' age are like your age. You know what I'm saying, Derek? They're like
right. Yeah. They're
more your age.
If I had done it by the book, right?
Right.
I would have because we've
in retrospect, I would have liked to done it by the book, but it's
Hey, I'm
because
just
you don't know.
Am I going to be able
You
to
don't
roll
know
around
things.
with her and you know, am I still going to physically be there?
Well,
when
Chris
I'm that dad?
was probably a little bit young. Like you when you don't know things, sometimes it's better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When you're going through and you're learning it versus having experienced things and then
Yes.
seeing things that you want to, change.
Definitely.
Sometimes it's better to not know as much. I will say that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was once upon a time I was a really young parent, and then I had
Right.
the benefit of being an older parent because I had a big range of ages
Right.
for my kids. So definitely true. Yeah.
Right.
It's
And
really
then look,
true, 'cause
that's two totally different experiences for
Yeah,
you, Chris,
definitely.
right?
Yep,
Like
definitely.
across the board. No doubt.
Yep.
No doubt.
you're learning with them versus now you have knowledge in your. But one of the things that like
Yeah.
that I think is important for like young kids to understand is that the aptitude and the skill side can be acquired. So, and that's important for parents. And then there becomes a point, which you talked about earlier, where you have to make decision if the learning curve on those areas are not equaling what has to happen for that time where you are in the scale of where you. So it could happen, like I said, it could happen at the NFL, right? The guy could have been a great all the way through. And you know what? Like it's just not there anymore, right?
Yep.
So there's that an important thing. Now, everybody's parent, every parent now wants their kid to try quarterback at some point. That's what I've noticed.
God,
Like
everyone. Yep.
Everyone. And what's weird about it, coaching youth football, is it's a very difficult conversation because when you're the coach of it, because there are those parents are usually pretty driven parents, I would say in general.
Yep.
And a lot of times, even if their kid is not going to be a successful quarterback, they themselves usually have most quarterback parents have some level. I mean, there's different instances, but have some level of they've had some level of success themselves. I'm not saying athletically, but some level of success professionally, right? And I've noticed that quarterbacks that they themselves have had some level of success in something.
Yes.
And in their mind, quarterback is a natural spot for them to go in football because they've had success. And so it's very difficult in those conversations. Like sometimes I've done a little bit of the let them go and then let them see it. And then I can have that conversation because, I always feel bad for the kid that he has to go through it, but like they kind of have to come through that realization a little bit themselves, or it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe your skill isn't where this other guy's skill is. You figure out how you can go acquire that skill more also, but that's an important thing, I think, for quarterbacks as they go through, because if your kid's going to play quarterback just thinking you're going to avoid contact, wrong. There's like your quarterback in high school and in youth football is going to get laid out. Even on the best teams, he's going to get laid out and he's not going to see it coming. Okay. So if you think that that's what you're doing by playing him at quarterback, which a lot of these parents, I really do, like, they almost think it's like a golfing, like you're going to golf. It's like, no, like your kid is going to get laid out. And as the younger they are, believe it or not, the parents don't realize the more they're going to get laid out. Like,
yes. It's just, and I also think if the child is inheriting that mentality or approach from the parent, it's usually a recipe for disaster, because usually if the kid is like, let's go, strap them up, let's go, that's usually the kid that's going to have some level of like that grittiness and attitude and just that we want in a quarterback to begin with. If we're looking to hide somebody at quarterback, it's bad. And I would my direct appeal.
Not a suggestion for success, by the way. Don't hide that kid at the most pivotal position possible, where every snap like literally matters.
My direct I agree with that. My direct advice to parents would be, this is his experience, not yours. As much as you want it to be yours, it's not
about you.
Yeah, it's just there's, involved parents can be successful, but like true helicopter parents usually they just put undue stress on their child, man. It's just really
and stress on themselves as a parent too.
I agree.
Like, and try and fulfill certain aspirations.
Agreed. It's not.
Well, I didn't play college football, but my kid's gonna do it, right? Like he's going to. And most times that adds just more, that like mom and dad are now going at it because she feels like, or he feels like the one side is not on par. Like there's so many
you all have
things
to
that
be
go
on
into
par.
it. If you're not all on the same page,
football,
right? You've seen it, Dave, recently, right? Like moving to the middle school world.
Parents have to be like, hey man, my kid might get hit. Like, and you got to be okay with it because I don't care what position you're playing, right? Like, I really don't. Like, I'm flabbergasted, and I don't just see it at my team happens to be very good, so I set a lot of standards. Obviously, I coached in high school, so I know to come in and like, hey, this is how it's going to work. This is what's going to happen. This is what I'm doing. I just want you to know, so when you see it, you're not surprised. Okay.
Agreed.
I'm not saying you're going to love what I do or don't. You might love it. You might not.
Yeah.
I want you to know because when you see it happen, this is what's going down, right?
Yep.
Like what I see and this is one of the things that I think, in the tri-state area, has to continue to evolve with football. Like a lot of youth coaches don't think of themselves as building kids to be better high school players, and then obviously build better high school players, then could become good college players, and then beyond there. They're either jumping too many steps in their mind.
It's a great point.
Or they're like they're trying to figure out like how they can manipulate the system, right? And that goes
I've seen it at the college level. Seen it at the college level, believe it or not. But go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sure it does. Now it's because of transfer portal. It's probably it's everywhere. But I always say like youth football is now in college. That's what I say all the time.
Yeah.
It's youth football is now in college. Youth sports is now in college, right?
Sports.
So, but it's one of those things that's important for parents to and the guys and including the guys coaching football, right? Like you have to think about it in that approach, okay? Because that you're trying to continue to get them better for the long run. You don't know, like, listen, in youth sports, you might have a kid that's great for 2 years and he decides he's going to be a baseball player. I mean, it's going to happen, right? Like, and you're like, oh my God, he's so good at football, but maybe he was better. You don't know. Maybe he was better at baseball. Maybe it's going to happen, but your intent has to be that approach to get them step by step better for high school, whatever high school they go and play at, right? So I think that that's an important thing. And I think that in football in particular, because the club space is starting to creep in there, well, not creep in, it is there, that they feel like what you talked about with the quarterback, that if they just go to this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy, they'll cover all the bases. And all they're doing is what you talked about earlier is like creating a level of confusion. I always think like, hey, listen, I'm not going to say it's not a bad idea to try something different if it's not working. You should. You should. But if you get something that is working for your kid, then you listen, I don't think there's anything wrong with having like, hey, you want, I call it the second opinion. Nothing wrong with getting the second opinion like you would with a doctor, right?
Right, with a doctor. Absolutely.
Like a guy you were saying earlier, a guy goes to a person that works really well for them. They want to come to you and they'd like Chris Johnston to take a look at him, get a second pair of eyes. What do you think? I think a second opinion, there's nothing wrong with that.
Agreed.
But if you're having success, try to figure out how you could double down on that success as much as possible, and get with as much as you can people that are good people, right? Because there are plenty of bad people, and not just someone who's going to tell you always. And this is big in the QB space, and you probably see this a lot. Not always just tell you what you want to hear, because quarterback coaches, a lot of new guys, they just tell you what you want to hear. Like, listen, they do it to me, and I'd like to say that they don't know who I am, but guys do it to me, and they know the stuff I've been involved. Like, I'm like, you don't need to tell me. I already know what he does well. Okay, I already know certain things that he doesn't do well. I need you to be able to be like, okay, this is what his progression is. This is where he has to get better.
Yep.
This is, this is the steps that we're going to take to get him better.
Yep.
Right. Because like I can watch my own kid and be like, all right, I know these flaws and I know the things that he does well, and he's got to work on this and he's got to work on that. I want a guy that can figure that out and then know what the progression is, and be able to do that, because otherwise, what am I paying for, right? What am I paying for if you can't do it? Yeah,
one of the most, no, I was just gonna say one of the most, I think training grounds, one of the best training grounds for me, it's been a real education for me, is having to recruit athletes to come play in college. And it's been this is on the job training for me, because we at Monroe University, we were Monroe College forever. We became Monroe University in 24. And so we were Division I NJCAA, National Junior College Athletic Association, for many years. We are now in our transitional year to move to NCAA Division II. So
Awesome.
you see, thank you. So we see a lot.
Which you're seeing a lot of that move being made, by the way.
Cool.
I mean, Lackawanna, you know what I mean? Like all
Black's
these
doing it
schools.
well. Yeah,
Everybody's doing it. It's awesome.
Yes. Thank you, man. So one of the things that you have to be able to, my approach with it is to be really, I like the phrase, brutally honest with it, and just say, like, this is where I think that you're at. Sometimes I can remember being on the other side of it and coaching in high school and just hearing coaches, like, you knew that college coach was lying to you. Like, yeah, this kid, he might be close. You have to stop and be like, will you stop saying that, please? Like, just understand what I'm dealing with. We're dealing as a staff with parents who all you're doing is fueling their delusion. If there's no chance that you're ever going to recruit this guy, like, just say so, man. Like, just let us know so that we can give parents a reasonable expectation. Sometimes I know that guys I've coached, I like to think I could be pretty objective. For God, I've done it with my own children. I've done it with people that I've coached over the years, to try to just be like, look, this is where I think he's at. Sometimes you're wrong, and that's great when you're wrong and they're actually able to get recruited at a higher level than you thought. It's rare. In my experience, it's rare, but it's great. Tip your cap to them and say, hey, listen, man, I misfired on that one. I thought you were a D2 player, but you got some FCS offers or whatever. But now it's more important than ever, because the NCAA last April, as you guys I'm sure are well aware, reduced the roster limits in FBS and FCS football from 120 to 105. That had a devastating downstream effect, especially the NCAA does not seem to really think a whole lot. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it doesn't seem, or like, let me say, decision makers don't seem to have considered what the impact might be on high school athletes so I would imagine that I know a million of my friends are high school coaches, that I like to use the example of 3 years ago, you could, especially 5 years ago, you could pick up the phone as a high school coach and call your buddy, and you have a program kid who's a tough kid who will withstand the rigors of college football. You could call your D3 head coach or assistant coach buddy in college and say, this kid hasn't gotten a sniff. This kid is a program kid all the way. He'll do the right things. Maybe he'll get on the field with you at some point. And your buddy's going to say, I'll take him. Probably 9 times out of 10. Now, if you make that call, he's going to tell you, I don't have any room for him, man. Like, because now everything's pushed downstream, because you got 1A borderline guys going to FCS. You got FCS guys down at D2. My evaluation, there are some FCS players in D3 right now in college.
No doubt. I reference that all the time, Chris, because I started at Sacred Heart, transferred to Montclair State. There was a lot of them.
No doubt.
A good amount of players that played with me D3 that were way higher level than, and
now
that's
it's
2008.
Yeah, no doubt. So now it's only that, to your point there. Now it's even more intense.
Much more so now.
Yeah. So I think,
no doubt,
being like straightforward with people right at the beginning. Like, I've eaten my own dog food on this over the years. So my oldest son was, we lived in Brooklyn. He got into boxing when he was like 7 or 8, and he trained at Gleason's gym under the Brooklyn Bridge. It's like the mecca for boxing training. And his trainer was a dude, shouting out so many people here in this interview. Again, guy's name's Lennox Blackmore. He was a really good pro. He fought a Hall of Famer, Aaron Pryor, for the world title. Like, he was a legit boxer who was a very good trainer, but also an elite fighter. My son got to about 11, and he just looked like he was starting to lag in training a little bit, really not loving it. And he pulled me aside and said, don't be one of these dummies who's like, you're just going to lean harder into your son doing collision sport. He said, this sport is brutal. And he said, don't be that father. So it killed me, but I was like, I left him alone. And I brought it up with my son, said, you don't seem like you're into it. And I was like, hey, we want to take a little break from boxing? He took me up on it in a second. He was like, I would really like to take a break from boxing. And I was like, all right. So I thought the dream was dead. So about 4 years later, my oldest son called me at work. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, nothing. He's like, you mind if I go back to the gym tomorrow? And I was like, that was a major lesson for me. So he got back into it, and it was like religion for him. He was so into it. And he wound up fighting 2 years, New York City Golden Gloves as a junior and a senior in high school. But it had nothing to do with me. Like zero, you know what I mean? Like it just wasn't, we think we control all this stuff as parents, but we really don't. Like, in fact, you can have such a devastatingly bad inverse effect on what your dream is. Like, you crush your own dream for your child by pushing too hard. I also had another example. Like, he was a quarterback, my oldest son, like when he was in youth football. And then he got to high school at a really good program. And his freshman year, they were just like, you're not a quarterback. Like, you're not playing quarterback anymore. And he came to me. He's like, do you mind? He's like, I know you do all this stuff with quarterbacks. Are you gonna be upset if I'm not? I go, I don't care, man. Just get on the field. And it was just like, and I know if I had pressed that point and I had been that parent, like, I want to meet with the AD and the head coach and all that.
Right.
What they probably would have done was, no problem. He could stay a quarterback. And he would have sat on an aluminum bench for 4 years and just would have never played. So I would have won the battle, lost the war. And for my son, he wound up flourishing. He wound up playing. He played Division I college football. He's a 2-time captain in football, like in college, because these guys saw what he was, believed in and they knew what they were talking about. And despite, me being a coach all these years and everything else, I was just like, it was, I think for me, that boxing lesson I had learned a few years earlier, like, don't think you're the genius in the room all the time. And just kind of step back from the situation a little bit and said, whatever you guys think he is, that's what he's going to play and that's what he's going to do. And it all worked out, So I feel like those are two examples close to home for me that really illustrate times where I had to just be like, I don't have all the answers, man, So, by the way, I see you guys put QB Guru. I'm just noticing this as QB Guru. My wife had some complete QB shirts designed a few years back, and they're great. I got to see if I got some. I got to send you each one of these. It's great.
Oh, that'd be great.
Got the complete QB logo on the front, on the back, in big block letters. It says, I'm no guru. A great shirt, man. So,
oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I can always change that for you after.
I love it.
the best.
Really awesome stuff. I can't thank you. I mean, we could talk to you for forever.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for coming on, and maybe we'll do a part 2 with pulling up some videos and getting your thoughts on them.
Yeah.
Because I think that's interesting, and because it's QB is one of those positions obviously most people spend so much time talking about them and all those kind of things, but it's a really, really interesting thing because they're at the center of the fire and they have to lead everything.
Yeah.
And especially at the highest level, but on any team, like usually teams go, and it's not just about what they're doing on the field, but like if the QB's on, mentally on that day and it is playing well. Yeah. Usually the team has a pretty good result, the best result they could get, right? I mean, sometimes obviously they're different talent levels, right? But the best result that they can get. And if he's not, usually it's a result that's not as good. And and it's not just about how they actually play, but their mindset to it too. It's they could actually be struggling and the team could be doing great if the QB has the right approach to everything. So
correct.
It's an interesting position. I mean, I'm always obsessed with like the things that make people great and the things that are flaws of people, and both mentally and athletically, right?
Yes.
And and it's by the way, no person will, we'll all die and never have it perfect, you know what I'm saying? But at least if I always say, if you're a smart person, you're going to die never knowing all the things you really wanted to know.
That's true.
Like you're going to be constantly searching, and you're going to be sitting there, and you're like, "Darn, I wish I." You know, well, you might be thinking about if you're in pain, but you're gonna be like, "Wow, I would have loved to know this, this, and this, and I never got to know that." You know, but that means you're smart because you're trying to always inquire about things. But yeah, it's great having you on. I can't thank you enough. And hopefully, we'll get a part 2 together at some point.
Love it.
We'll go through it. Thanks so much, Chris.
Perfect. Coaches,
Thanks,
for your
Chris.
time. It was
Thanks,
blessed.
buddy. Talk soon.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Thanks.
Great stuff, dude. Great.
It's always good to talk to somebody that, like, you know what I mean? Like he even talked about, like, yeah, probably not business 101, but, you know, just what's in the best nature for the QB, the kid, the player. Like, that's a really hard thing to do when you're trying to have a business out of it. But at the end of the day, right, it's about like what puts that kid in the best position to do it. And again, like longevity wise, like you're talking about a space that's very difficult to continue in it for as long as he's been in it, you know?
And in sports, if you want to be wildly successful, other than being a coach in college or a high level football, high level high school, or the NFL, and you're doing private business, people think that you're going to just get rich. It's not really how it works.
No,
you can earn a living. There's no doubt you can earn a living, but in order to get rich, I always think,
but it's not going to be easy.
In order to get rich in sports, I can tell you really quickly how you can get rich in sports. Be a part of a conglomerate that acquires a lot of different properties, okay, and be at the top, either owning that or at the top in management of it. And that is the fundamental number one way to do it, right? Whether it's a hedge fund acquiring the properties or a group investing in the sports properties, or you're a high level executive in one of those kind of organizations that are acquiring those kind of groups and lots of clubs. That's really, like, if you're like a person say but if you're an individual business, you know, you could do very well. You could have a lot of success. You could help a lot of people. But if you know, it's you're not going to live Tom Brady's life. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's an important thing to understand. And I do think, you know, have been someone that got into it thinking on the both sides that you'd help a lot of people and be able to get a certain amount of success. At first, I never even really fathomed that we would actually do as much as we did. But then once we did, I also learned that, like, there's different levels. Like you have to be willing to do certain things, and people have to be, you know, be willing to do certain things in order to get to that next level.
Yep.
I would say I got to where you could go as a smaller business. There's maybe you can get squeezed probably another $3 or $4 million in business, being a small and being successful. But in order to jump to the next level, which is like probably 10 million and beyond, you really have to do. There's much more. You have to acquire a lot more employees and be willing, not just able to manage them, willing to manage a large amount of people. And that's a different budget level. That's a different kind of thing. So I think Chris's approach has been really great. And, you know, he's been able to carve out. It's funny because I hadn't heard this story before. I never heard his story as far as like, I remember when he was running all the camps, and it kind of coincided because he was obviously with us in the beginning.
Think about it. He peaked in 2011. That's what he said. He said he did the most camps in 2011, and that was right around the time when things started to change a little bit.
Right. And then
social media really took off then,
you know? 2006. We were many more camps. So we had another 5 years before ours started, right? If we were doing 100, he was doing 20. It took 5 more years for us to really get to that point, right? To start to get to that point. And but it's interesting because it mirrors it to an extent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it mirrors the change in the industry. Like,
absolutely.
You could almost map the change in the industry to all of those kind of changes. And I could tell you at 7-on-7, I'm watching, like, even that map, like the guys who did a lot of national tournaments who went crazy with it. Like, there were some companies that went crazy with it, and they, you know, I partnered with this guy and now we're all doing it together. They were doing like, I saw guys were doing like 30 or 40 at a clip. They've pared back, right? Because in sports, which is totally different than operating like Tesla or something, like the intellect, there's no intellectual property, right? So when you don't have intellectual property, like if you're operating a Tesla, you have a manufacturing firm, you have intellectual property, you have, you have things that you could double down on that are different than maybe another business, right? And once you get to a certain point, you have what I call barriers of entry to entry. Sports, there's very little barriers to entry. So being the best at what you do is important, but it probably is very important regionally because you'll get continually business. But nationally, okay, I'm the best nationwide. Well, there's a guy that's around the corner for me. I could drive 20 minutes and he's really good. Why do I need the guy who's best nationally? Like this guy's really, really good. He's going to give me just about as much, right? So that eventually arose in that business. So it's interesting. Sports business is it's become so big. It's very interesting what's going on, and it's going to completely change with the AI school academies that are coming out. So look this up for your own reference. Alpha Academy, which is they utilize AI to teach. So instead of going to school, what do you have to go to school now? 6 hours, is it, Derek?
What do you mean?
6? The kids go to school mandatory. I think it's 6. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know if there's an hour limit. I know it's 180 something days. For public.
Or I would say in general, what do they do? 6 or 7, right? So if that's what they end up doing school for, they're doing school in 3 hours. Okay. And then I think
COVID showed a lot of people how to handle it and how they can compact certain things into, it's just going to school for 6 hours. I think if you think about when you really break it down to how much actual teaching time is taking place, right? It's going to be a lot less than what you're actually there for. It's the social aspect and all of those things that go into going to school that I think are pivotal, which is why I think kind of this group of kids rolling through right now, they're, the COVID kids where they had to stay home for half a year and things were just off in terms of school setting socially and all of that. Like you're seeing a little bit of some weaknesses in some areas that we haven't seen before. And it's a direct correlation because of that.
So I think that is it's a good point. So with the compressing of time of teaching, what you're seeing is these and baseball is like one of the first to do this. Youth baseball and high school baseball, I guess, maybe club high school. They're utilizing some of these alpha groups, almost like what you see like even like the Pre-C Academy does with the reclasses, where they're doing this for 3 hours, and what they're filling their socialization part with is coming in and doing the athletic physical development part, which is really interesting because what I think
that's still not walking through a hallway. That's still not sitting at a lunch table. That's still not any of that.
But I think it's interesting because what's funny about it to me is that phys ed, which was a big mandatory thing originally across the country, what it basically tells you is that there's a rejection of the lack of physical components within regular education, meaning as they move more away now, Texas is obviously reinserting it. And a lot of states, even though New Jersey still has it as mandatory, it's not the same physical education program that it once was. The people keep coming back to the point that they need a certain level of physical development with their kid. It happens to be that it's going towards sports, but the reason why I think it is because once you took away physical education, that outlet, that scheme within school, you started to take it away. I think that the parents go, oh my God, my kid isn't doing anymore. He's not moving. Okay, now we play more sports because of that. Like, eventually everybody still wants their kid to move, right? So there's a learning component to, especially boys, even more so than girls, but even girls, they want their kids to move, right? And what happens is when they get the feedback that their kid doesn't want to go to school and that their kid likes gym, and gym is just kind of a mess around period, and now it comes way back to like the beginning. Now it comes right back to like, my kid needs to move. My kid needs to do things. Like, so what's the point of having them just sitting on their ass for 6 hours? like if I can have them doing school and then move, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not sure the Alpha School actually is a school. So it's not just they actually, there's a physical place that they go to, but it's not in the same, just like Priest Academy is a physical place.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so it's like a Priest Academy or like an IMG.
Yeah, but it's just a school. There's no athletic part to it, or there's no like, it's just a school, and then they're free after that. So, but they're utilizing these new learning tools to be able to do it. You know, like there's a thing called that the college kids use now, which is called Study Fetch, which you basically could take this video podcast, for example. You could take this podcast, put it into Study Fetch, create like quizzes, and you could come out of it. And like, if you wanted to like get the information from the podcast without watching all of the podcast, you put it in the study.
Notes.
Yeah, it's even better because it asks you questions, you get answers, and then you have study guides, which would be Cliff Notes. Then you have quizzes, and then you have exams that you could take apart on that subject with all the information you provided and get the regular answer, which is really kind of interesting, right? Like it's a very, very way of learning. And I my guess is they're taking that combined with a person teaching it. And that's what Alpha is, probably like some form of study.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid
with a human, right? With a human to, you know, answer questions, explain. And it's really, you know, you probably learn to an extent somewhat with that stuff. I know I do. Like I take all my stuff and I put it into a certain thing, and I'm like, okay, break this down for me, right? Like tell me all the things. You know, what AI doesn't do a great job of yet is diagramming. So
Right.
it does some of it
Well,
really.
I think the picture stuff is tough for it.
Yes. Now, when it does get diagramming down to a T, it could be interesting. Like I find it like, could you imagine at some point this will happen, but like you go like, draw me up this set, draw me up this play, and it goes and draws it up to you to a T, and then like maps it out. Like as a coach, the coaches that when that gets to that point, you'll be able to like teach your kids really quickly. You know what I'm saying? Like really, really quickly. Like,
well, I think a lot goes into how the kids learn too. You know what I mean? Like you may have kids that don't learn like that, and then it might not be a good tool. You know, even if you condition them from a young age that, you know,
well, they
here's
are
the model
conditioned.
and here's how it is. I mean,
I
think it's really
most
hard.
of them are conditioned on an electronic model. So, which is going to be a limitation for future guys if they don't understand it, because
Absolutely. It's just like when things moved from paper to computers, like you're going to have, if that's what the model is going to be, or now it's if you only learn paper, like you are so behind or you can't figure, like, you know what I mean? Like, so if that's how the whole thing is, but like public education takes so long to adapt and get into that. You know what I'm saying? Like by the time it's a full blown takeover of like, you know, just look at like when we moved from paper to everything's on a Chromebook or whatever, like that transition of movement, like little by little by little by little to where now it's a full transition, like takes time. And that's kind of the problem. If you could just kind of lay it out and implement it and say, boom, this is what we're doing. Now let's move forward. Like, I think that would be great, but it's hard to do that.
The, one skill that like, it's amazing that it worked out for me in life was, typing, which I hated.
Now I'm so glad I did that.
You did it too. It was the best. It ended up being the best. One of the best classes I ended up taking, because even though I was a crappy typer, I can actually type just like you could probably actually type. And whereas most people, when they're on the computer, they move so slow, dude. They move slow typing things in, because
I remember, I'm trying to think of what it was. I don't know if it was my parents or if it was someone, right? Like sophomore year of high school, hey, you have the option to take these classes or a typing or business. You know what I mean? Like typing and business, or, you know, art. And it was, oh hell, I'm taking typing and business because that's going to help me more so.
Life.
And, yeah, absolutely. Like I love to draw. That's great. But at the end of the day, like that's not what I'm looking to, you know what I mean? So I'm not just going to take that when I could take this and I know it'll transition forward. And I remember my guidance counselor being like, yeah, that's a better move for the track that you're looking for. But it's also really hard to kind of, when you're in it, guys are like, well, I just want to take art. And it's like, no, like this, take this, that's where your guidance counselors and guidance and all that stuff like plays such a big role. I talk about it all the time. Like those guidance counselors have to be on full blown, like understand, like, and I get it. Their caseloads are hard. They got 300 kids to work with. And how do you talk to everybody and know everybody individually? And kids will just yes you to death, but they're just going by the general, hey, take this, this, and this based off of what you've taken before. Like not many of them really take the time to kind of dive into what a kid would actually, works or where their tracks are going. It's really hard, but I wish more would kind of take that extra minute and ask those questions. Be like, do you really want art or do you really want this? Because it makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, it's amazing how the things that you weren't thinking about and you learned that really were most advantageous to you.
Yeah.
Like it really, it's very, I don't know, it's fun. It's funny and interesting. But yeah, that's really good stuff. Chris, it's good to see Chris. Chris looks the same basically, other than a couple of grades.
Dude, he works so hard. He does so much with the NJFCA, man. Like, you know what I mean? The New Jersey
Is he a
Football Coach Association.
I guess maybe.
Yeah, well, he's a full-time. Yeah, no, he's full-time. Where is it? Monroe College?
Yeah. That's going to, I guess, end up being opportunities for kids. So.
Well, listen, it's awesome. Everybody now that's moving from that whatever model to that NCAA Division II, right? Like you see a lot of them jumping into Division II because that's where you can give money and do all those kind of things. Like, especially, I know I've referenced it before with Lackawanna making the move, right? Like they were the JUCO model for the Northeast. Now they're making that move. It's just going to open up a whole slew of, hey, here we go. And, in the upcoming weeks, we're going to have Coach Accorsi on, who's just starting a program at Salem Community here in New Jersey, a JUCO program that had never had football. And with his knowledge of being a Division III football coach at Rowe for so many years and whatnot, like that's going to open up some avenues for some guys. So the opportunities are there. You just got to find them.
You got to find them. Yeah, exactly. It's just
like you got to do some work. We talk about it all the time. It's changing. The model is different, but you now as that parent or even a high school coach, like you got to make yourself aware of what's going on in that world because coaching football and actual football is one thing, but there's a whole off season of training, recruiting. Like you have to be up and understanding what's going on in that world. And it's constantly changing. But it's not hard to figure this stuff out because it's all right here. You just have to go search it and look at it and ask questions. It's all there to understand it. You have to get with the times. Ask those coaches that come into your building, hey, what's the world like? Talk about it a little bit with them because they're willing to let you know what's going on, boots on the ground. And that's
absolutely.
That's the direct correlation for getting your guys to that next level if that's what the premise of it is, right? Like, because there's always going to be guys on your roster that want to play at the next level. And that's your job is to help them. I understand with social media and whatnot, coaches can now kind of skip that step and go directly to the player or the parent, right? Which is brutal to me. But now with AI, like creating false huddle clips, like the head coach is going to be, and the assistant coaches are going to be a measuring stick for you, right? Like, hey, did this really happen? Like, you have to have those conversations. And to me, any good college recruiter or coach is going to ask those questions and come and speak to the coach directly. But I literally listened to a podcast yesterday with the new head coach from Iowa State talking and Urban Meyer. And Urban Meyer was saying, like, talking about like, hey, I never offered a scholarship to a guy that I didn't like sit down and have dinner with. And now you have guys that are literally offering guys who they've never even had on campus because of the way the transfer portal is and stuff. That's what he said. First reference from the Iowa State guys. Like, yeah, I've offered guys that have never even been on campus, or like I've only had. Now he obviously said, look, we either have a previous relationship with them or we recruited them originally out of high school or some of that kind of stuff. But like Urban was just like, oh my God, like this is the world we're living in, where you're talking to people, you're talking to quote like agents asking what's the going rate for an outside linebacker to come here. Like it's unbelievable how fast this is moving. You know, that's the thing that gets me, like how fast this is going from getting guys paid to now all of a sudden there's market values for transfer portal third-year linebackers out of wherever or what. It's just the speed at which it's happening to me is like mind-blowing.
Absolutely. The speed that all this is changing is and by the way, as fast as that's going, like youth sports, I don't know if high school's evolving as quickly, but youth sports is going at a dude. It's
because there's more money. Like youth sports is where the money is, because mom and dad are willing to pay. Like they want little Jimmy to be in the best situations. Like irregardless of how much I have to pay, they'll find a way. That to me is the biggest difference between that and high school.
Even what kind of person they're the kind of coaches. So one of the things that's happening, I think, is people are like, okay, rec is rec. Everyone's cool with rec. Like, you know, when they play it, like it is what it is. Like win, lose, or draw, you play rec. So I think that's coming back around. The middle part, so everybody understands elite. Like this guy is an elite athlete. He plays in some elite thing, quote unquote. People probably understand that. The middle part, which is the regional travel stuff in all sports, parents are starting to be like, hey, like these guys cannot be rec coaches doing this.
Right. No, they have to be a higher level talent, a higher level coach.
Higher level, but obviously you're not going to get like, I don't know, an Urban Meyer guy to coach that group either. So now you want them to be as good as coach as possible, but you don't want a rec coach. But what's happening is they're moving around a lot towards people that they know actually can do the job. And I've noticed in a lot of these different sports, because they're starting to say, like, at least where I live, they're like, whoa, like this guy is coaching us in like regular.
Dude, town has got
our town
going on, bro. Yeah, right now.
Well,
I would say
we're at the kind of the edge of it, right?
All the stuff that's going on in your town, though, with closing schools and craziness, bro.
A lot.
Superintendents leaving before any of it happens, right? Like
our superintendent left in our school system?
Well, I believe it's a female, or I mean, whoever it is ratiring before all of this stuff goes down. And
they want to.
Like I've seen videos posted about, you know, five board members are all kind of in cahoots because of some of the things that they've done. Whatever. I mean, it is, and it's in the limelight. I mean,
yeah.
Like a 5-hour board meeting. It's crazy. Yeah, because you're not in the public school setting. You know what I mean? So
I do read it. And I hear the guys talk about it. Like the guys that coach, I hear them talking about it. But I don't know as much just because
I've done some research because I felt like, hey, this is kind of close, right? And obviously with my kids getting ready to
Brick has a little bit of it. Brick has a little bit of it too.
I think everywhere has it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the bigger Monmouth County and Ocean, the bigger Monmouth and County Ocean districts that are independent, like Middletown, Brick, Toms River, right?
Toms River's another disaster.
What was the other? Maybe Jackson, but
Jackson's a different limelight because there's so much going on outside of it. You know what I'm saying? Like with population changes and how like there's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Freehold might be immune. I wonder if Freehold's immune too, because they have this weird system at the high school level where they're all like
they're all one.
They're all one, so maybe they're a little bit immune to it.
Yeah, their district's different in the way they do it.
But I did note it. Like Toms River, if you were to say the three biggest that are probably dealing with the most are probably Toms River, Brick, and Middletown, because they're the biggest cities. Of course. In Monmouth and Ocean County, and they're dealing. It's interesting because it is like there are like crazy issues because they're considered suburban, right?
But
So
they're
they
the
don't get
biggest
the
of what it is
funding
now,
of
yeah.
a city, even though they're as big.
Well, funding across the state has dropped dramatically in the last couple of years. I mean, everybody's dealing with that, and then it's just a matter of how do you balance your budget and how do you if you were one of these districts that was kind of
But we're not
like
considered cities, even though we're
if you
city
used
population.
if
right?
you used that money that came from the state, if you used that in a certain way, right? Like now, all of a sudden, that's not there. Now you have to go and figure out, okay, well, where do I get it from in order to do it, right? Like if you were depending on those things, like now it's a real problem because it's not there and it's not coming back. So what do you do? Do you fire a bunch of people or do you close schools in order to save money? Like there's just so many things that go into it. It's insane. And if you haven't been, kind of up on it or, working towards it, right? Because everybody paints a great picture, but then when you actually have to put it down in a pen to paper and actually do it, right? Like it's a lot. There's a lot to it, man. It's crazy. And parents obviously are passionate about it because it's firsthand. It's your kids' livelihoods. It's your livelihood as a parent for what your kid's gonna be involved in and do things like. It's your boots on the ground when it comes to it. It's a crazy world to follow in those regards because everybody does it a different way and everybody has their own kind of problems, right? And there's some things that are across the board issues for people, but then again, everything else comes down to like what's going on in your town, what's the makeup of it, and how does that stuff work? Like it's a lot.
Agreed. It's very, very
It's very temperamental too, like
right.
because it hits home for a lot of people,
Yeah, it definitely hits home. There's no doubt about it. Interesting.
Well, because tomorrow, like I said, tomorrow we have Nick Zacchino will be on, right? He's the founder of Karna Nutrition. He's got a crazy story for how he kind of got where he is. Lifelong, like I believe it's Crohn's disease sufferer, but Division I player, and how he's kind of fought through it. And now, as the founder of his company here, Karna Nutrition is kind of helping guys with the nutrition aspect of the game and kind of working through some of those things. If you're out on the level that he is, which God, I pray most people aren't because Crohn's is a brutal disease to live with. So it'll be awesome to talk to him. Really good kid. Cedar Grove kid.
Cedar Grove. Okay, cool. Yeah, send me.
Yeah, I'll send you his stuff.
You know what I'm actually buying today because I just can't take it anymore.
Oh boy.
I'm buying a butt cushion.
Oh really? Because you're in the chair for so long.
Yeah, it's not just a chair for
you are getting old.
Yeah, I have to buy a butt cushion. Is that sad? Isn't that sad there? Sad.
I mean,
it's very sad.
It's not really sad. You're just adapting to the lifestyle that it is now.
My butt, it hurts too much. Sit there. Sit in the chair. Can't take it.
It's all good, buddy. We'll figure it out.
All right, man.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
You got it. Great job today. Great job.